they're going to miss that the human element is the moat,
Right.
especially on the lower end. On the higher end, they know that enterprise sales is a lot of relationship building. Yo,
How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you, Harry. We're
Nice to see you.
Yep. It's
Back
I feel
from
like
the West Coast on myself.
yeah.
Little
Go.
trip. Got to really check out the Mac Mini setup while I was on the West Coast working. Had Claude pounding away on the Mac Mini. It was great.
That
It was very nice to see that it all worked exactly as we planned.
So that's an advanced topic, and we could probably jump into that, like when we talk about executive personal assistants, because I think that's a huge kind of update, or it's not huge, but it's an exciting update for us. And it's cool that you have figured that out, and I think we should share that with the audience because it's what we're talking about a lot when we're writing and we're discussing in our newsletter and our podcast.
Yeah.
You are back, right? You're back in Connecticut. I'm still in Pasadena.
The background's the same, so therefore I'm back. Yeah, no,
you're back.
I'm back in Connecticut. Summer we skipped spring. We went straight to summer. It was like 85 yesterday. It's going to be like 90 today.
Yeah.
Like 92 tomorrow, something like that. So we're in humid New England summer already.
That's crazy. Yeah, LA's got this like sort of June gloom. It kind of feels like you see spots of blue and gray. It's very nice. It's cool when the sun comes out. It's hot. So we'll see what happens. I keep hearing super El Nino's coming. I don't know if you've been hearing that, but it's
the Super Nino. Yep. Yeah. It's supposed to be just a really hot summer and then really like a hot winter, I guess, which will be interesting. I mean, the snowfall obviously out west was horrendous this year for all the skiers, and and people moan and groan about the skiing. But I think the worst part is just the downstream effect of that, which is no snowpack, which means Colorado River will be low, which means you'll start to see water rationing, and if it gets really hot, you'll start to see more fires. You'll start, you'll see all the all that. I read something on Twitter that there was this huge plume of underwater, like hot underwater water that was going to bubble up, which was going to fuel this, this sort of Super Nino, and that's kind of bad news. Crop failures. It was total, it was a total apocalyptic tweet, but
Yeah, there's an author named Keith Stanley Robinson. He's a sci-fi writer that I like, and I forgot the book he had, but he really goes into great scientific detail and storytelling about basically just that. And frankly, I don't want to read it again, and I don't like reading the news about it because it's just like so gnarly. It's like you're just like, oh man, I don't want to read about that. So let's switch topics.
Yes.
What's driving global warming is essentially, people spending all their time building companies using AI.
It must be the data centers. They're heating everything up.
The data centers I think the almond growers might have more impact on water supply than data centers. But I wrote down two topics in this segment that we're going to cover, which was sort of the copy generation and time collapsing. So you had written a story yesterday that goes out on today, May 18th newsletter about a frustrated founder. Why don't you go into that?
Yeah, I read it over the weekend on Twitter, and I thought it was interesting. So it's a guy named Avi Patel. He is the founder of a company called Kled. Kled is a company that sells personalized data. You can sell your data to them, and they package it up, and then they pay you something for the the use of that data. The business itself, I'm not going to opine on. Doesn't really much matter. I'll just read what he said because it's really powerful stuff. Avi says, General Catalyst just co-led a $31.5 million seed round into a blatant ripoff of my company, Kled. I typically not speak on things like this, but this level of blatant copycatting is egregious and completely unacceptable and needs to be made an example of. This is one of hundreds of Y Combinator startups who have conducted this disgusting behavior, unimaginative slop that continues to get rewarded due to nepotism. The company he's referring to is a company called Lul, L-U-E-L, and they just raised a $31.2 million seed round.
That's a huge seed for a Y Combinator.
Yeah, it is a huge seed round. And congrats to all of these guys for raising that money. What I found interesting was, my first thought was is kind of the harsh, cynical, capitalist view of the world, which is boo friggin' who. This is capitalism, right? People will take your idea and they will rip it off and they will copy you and they will do it faster. They will do it cheaper. And they may do it better, but that's the world that you live in when you enter the capitalist society. And for Avi, he's obviously pissed off and he goes through a great, he does a whole, video and he really pissed off about this whole thing. And he shows that these guys have copied literally everything. The idea, the design of the web pages, like everything. And I think, what's interesting is that you look at this and this gets to, the point that we've made many times when we write, which is that time is just speeding up. AI time is not your normal time. You don't have time to build a moat. Your moat is your execution because your idea is it's open sourced at this point. It's public domain. And your design and your website and how you operate your business, that's completely public domain as well. I just point one of these many systems at it and say, copy this business, please. Give me a working model of it. I'd like it copied in 10 minutes. And 10 minutes later, you have their business, working on your server. And the only thing then becomes, how do you market that to consumers or to businesses? And how do you execute against the plan? Because that's the only difference between those two businesses at this point. And again, I haven't gone on both of them and messed around with it, but in theory, those are the only two things. And I think you just have to be ready for that. The question is, it's always been the question is, kind of what's your moat? And if you're building software in public, the answer is your moat is literally your execution because you don't have time to build up a big, consumer customer data moat, which some of these guys have. You could argue that someone like Salesforce has this enormous moat because you can copy Salesforce, but Salesforce is already embedded, in so many companies with so much data and so much history that, you'd have to rebuild all of that. So, maybe for new customers, there's no moat, but for existing customers, there's a real switching cost. For someone like, Cled or Lewell, I mean, I could sell my data to either of them or both of them. So what's the switching cost? And if it's zero, then you have no moat. All you can do is operate your business better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. I mean, I think you said a lot. So
Yeah,
it's never probably been easier today as a result of AI, but just as a result of a lot of things that have just been brewing, cloud computing and those sorts of things, to look at a market or an idea and copy. I mean, I think that's been happening for a really long time. It's just, I think what you are and what this fellow is talking about is that it can happen very quick now. I don't know if the founder would mind if someone copied his product over a course of 36 months and hard earned it. But I think there seems to be, based on what you're saying, there's this like nepotism from Y Combinator to let someone just look at a market and make a facsimile of it and then go after it. I think that seems to be the claim there, or the grievance, versus, hey, there's competitors in this market. There's Dell and there's Compaq. You know what I mean? And eventually one of them sells to the other. That doesn't seem like the problem. It's just, I think we're at this place where people can just look at your idea and frankly copy it
totally.
rapidly,
Yeah,
rapidly.
yeah, and I think, look, and I think the guy is, I think the guy thought I have a good idea, I have running room, and what did these guys do to, in all honesty, to get here, other than point, Cursor or Lovable or Claude or one of these, at my site and say copy it with a different color scheme. And the answer is they've done that. That is correct. They've probably done nothing more than that, or not much more. I'm sure they had the insights into it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it doesn't. I mean, and this is not a us taking sides one way or the other, because I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't really care. I think this is just reality. You
Yeah,
know,
I think the reason why we're actually talking about it is I feel is a notice to like entrepreneurs and managers and small companies is that you had no moat probably earlier in your development of your company, but you certainly don't now as a result of like a very shrewd marketer might like your space, but it has maybe perhaps never had a team or the server capacity, et cetera, to compete, but they could outmarket you. And now that marketer could actually enter your same market and be fabulous at sort of growth marketing, use of the internet marketing, and just copy your idea and kind of get up and running. So I feel like there's this onboarding of a different sort of talent entrepreneur that can challenge your technical expertise of your idea. So point is, prior, maybe 5, 10 years ago, your moat was that you could pull technical talent together, you can marshal the resources, you can allocate capital, and you can build, and your marketing may be, very sort of par. But now a marketer can come in who might be like, hole in one marketer on every hole and not worry about the tech because they could just copy it, have AI generate it, deploy it, and they can just outmarket you in a category and win. And that should be terrifying to entrepreneurs because the moat isn't the allocation of capital and the arranging of technical resources and server capacity. It's really going to be about how you can directly communicate with the customer, acquire the customer, and keep that customer happy. That to me is the moat. Is if you could do that better than anyone else, then you kind of win.
Yeah. How good are you at sales? How good are you at marketing?
Yeah.
How good are you at customer service? These are the things that will matter more, and that, that's, let's face it, that is not how Silicon Valley has worked for. I mean, those skills were always in high demand, but ultimately you needed engineering and programming and, and capital formation and all the other things, which is interesting because, quite frankly, most of the companies that get funded historically have been, companies founded by guys who are great at selling a story. They're great at selling themselves,
Well,
their
yeah,
story.
I think that still happens, right?
Right, of course it does,
Yeah.
right? So, if you're a lousy salesman, you better be a really good programmer or something. Like,
Well,
you have to have something, earth-shattering, because if you can't sell the story, and sell the dream, then why is someone going to invest?
well,
So you have to be
yes.
able to, yeah, you have to understand that in order for you to have gotten funded in the first place, you obviously are pretty good at that. Now you just have to do that 24/7,
Yeah,
because
and
that's actually really the only skill that's gonna matter to you.
right,
And quite
I
sorry.
feel like you're right. You're totally right. Continue.
No, I was just gonna say, and if you see competitors come in, then you should be copying them as aggressively as they are copying you.
Yeah, agreed. I feel like there's a tit for tat, and I think the All In podcast was discussing this. I think they had the founder uh, Bell from Salesforce on, and they were talking about this. And kind of what they were saying is the low end SaaS market's just gonna is just gonna get wiped out because uh, that market you could reproduce it. Like a smart company can just reproduce these single slice SaaS businesses internally using their own resources, which eliminates the per seat licensing for these things. And I think that's true. And then the bigger market, the Salesforce, the Snowflakes, those sorts of companies, they have really big sales organizations that have built themselves into these large organizations, and that's the moat. So it's like sales and sales engineering is the moat. And on the lower end, when the SaaS world started, it was like, hey, we could deploy this with just engineering talent, no real sales team. It's self-service, it's no code. The customer does all the work. And it's like, okay, that's gonna be actually not a moat anymore. What's gonna be the
Correct.
moat is, can you have hands-on, can you have a sorta empathetic sales engineer that will help you set up your software and be there, and I'll trade dollars for that or I'll just do it myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or when you're in a Salesforce organization, you need this like larger team to help you do this work. And so it's like the middle's gonna get blown away. I think the moat will be, how is your relationships with your customers? Literally, are you talking to them? Or do they like you? Do they go, "You know something? We're not gonna get rid of that company because they do a good service for us. We're not gonna, like, just build it internally and run it ourselves because that's gonna require human capital internally. We're gonna keep paying them." But the companies that have no relationship with you and you're just paying a SaaS check every month, say it's $1,000, I think those are gone because you're really
Yeah.
providing no real service anymore.
Yeah,
What
I
do you
think
think
it's
about that?
almost I think it's almost I'll take it a step further and say that, we've talked a lot about how AI is, firing people and then they're going to rehire them as consultants and come right back in the door. In the great Deploy Co.
Mhm.
From OpenAI or Anthropic's version of it. Um, I think that these companies that are selling into these businesses are going to have to basically think of themselves as extensions of each and every one of those companies. And if they are not adding value proactively to those businesses that they are servicing, they'll get replaced at some point by somebody who will. So it's not just I'm going to roll out a new feature for all of my 2,000 clients because I think it's a cool feature and hopefully everyone will use it and we're going to up the seat price because we're now more valuable. Now I think it's almost like individual company by company. You almost have to go through and say, what are you using my product for? How do I make it better for you? How do I make it easier for you? How does it solve more of your problems? Can I expand a little bit here? Can I solve another problem with this? How can I consult with the folks who are using this to make sure that you're getting the most out of it? Let me let me help you with that. So they become sort of like you said, they become sort of consultative engineers almost.
Yeah, I've been a systems engineer in the field, and I won deals because I spent the time with my customer and just sort of made them comfortable in, like, using the software and hardware that we had deployed. And
Right.
it was clear that I was winning deals just because I spent the human time with the buyer who was like, "Okay, yeah, I know Anthony, he's gonna get this thing done, blah, blah, blah. There's a competitor. They didn't come in." So the actual shift of, I think, the mode is gonna be it's not really to a super technical, developer who spent their life in SaaS. They're gonna miss that the human element is the mode.
Right.
Especially on the lower end. On the higher end, they know that. Enterprise sales is a lot of relationship building. No one's double clicking on a button that says buy $900,000 a year of software.
No.
It's like you're dealing with a lot of, like, you know, Dodger tickets, blah, blah, blah. They're spending a lot of time getting that customer really happy with you. And you might have had like a 10-year relationship with that customer. So
Yep.
the copy generation at the low end is happening. And by the way, that's happening that the customer just copies you the software that they've been using, and they just put it in there and they say, "Hey, Bobby, you're now running this." And you're just like, "Okay, I'm running this."
Yeah, look, if you want to really think about the SaaS apocalypse, the total destruction of value in the public markets of the SaaS companies, just think of it in this way. Every single stock is valued effectively. There's a marketplace where people agree or disagree on a price, and that price is based on the future cash flows of that business. And the idea was always that, that you had net retention of 90+% on the great companies, that pricing would go up over time and that margins would remain very strong over time. And your effectively the period under which you were going to earn these really high returns, the competitive advantage period or cap as a lot of Wall Street people call it, was going to be a long time, which is why people would at times pay 10 times revenue for these businesses because 10 times revenue at a 80% margin, worked out to be 25, 30 times free cash flow, something like that by the time you got all the way through the income statement. And that's not bad if free cash flow is growing and you think it's going to be there for the next 20 years. Well, with AI, you tell me what the cap is. For this guy at Cled, his cap was like 6 weeks before someone came along and just absolutely, you know, copied him. And now he's in a dogfight, and his margins are not going to be 80% anymore, but they're going to be they're going to be 40%. Or maybe his margin stayed 80%, but he can't grow the business at all.
Mhm.
In which case, whatever amount of money he raised is now just stuck, which would, lead you also to believe, like, if the General Catalyst guys did their homework, they'd look at it and go, there's a competitive company. Okay, that's great. There's a product market fit in this business. I got to believe that the marketplace is really large so that 2 companies will survive. Well, maybe 3 companies, 4 companies, 5 companies, because there'll be more. I mean, I thought about spinning up a CLED competitor myself when I read the article. Just, no,
It's efficient. It's a surfing spot. If you see a couple surfers out there,
exactly.
other
There's
people
some
are gonna
good,
come surf. It's like the
right.
waves are good.
That's exactly right. There's some good ways. You just sort of follow the crowd. And so if the competitive advantage period, the cap, goes from 20 years to 2 years, what do you think that does to the value of the company? Well, you've seen what happened in the SaaS apocalypse, right? It's down 50%. Some of the companies down 60, 70, 80%.
I mean, I think it's warranted. I mean, a lot of like a pure SaaS sold completely over the internet. Like you have no relationship with the company except a credit card bill and some usage of the software. It's easy to replace. It's harder to replace when you're dealing with someone who's been helping you build it. So I go back to the idea that services, software sold as a service is the way to win. And I kind of want to switch it here because I sent you the clip that we put up on our Twitter about Ken Griffin at a recent Stanford talk. He sort of had a realization, and you know, a lot of people that have money with, I mean, people that have money with that guy, they're probably meeting with him. They're probably talking with someone at the firm, right? So it's the money's safe with these guys, but they're losing they're losing their alpha because he suddenly realized that all his team and talent may be actually at risk of AI becoming as damn good as Citadel.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, Ken's the king, right? I mean, or
The
he's
king.
one, he's one of a few kings, right? But the guys who have done it in that sort of algorithmic high frequency trading, him, Jim Simons at Renaissance, who is no longer with us, the Jane Street guys, those are probably the big 3. And then you have guys like Two Sigma behind them that have, done unbelievable work in quantitative trading. These guys hired math PhDs, and they worked models for months at a time in order to come up with a profitable trading strategy. They would test, 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 and then finally deploy. And I think, Ken Griffin's comment was that, all of these super smart guys that have dedicated their life to this are seeing those tests, which took them a quarter, now being done in a quarter of an hour. And it's just, again, it's just internet time, right? It's just AI time. Everything is getting compressed. And so the advantage that you had by having to have multiple, $1 million plus PhDs on your staff testing for a quarter at a time, you know, goes away with a couple $1,000s of compute.
Yeah,
And that's difficult. So, I don't weep for Ken. Citadel will do fine. He's still smarter than the average bear. He still has an enormous advantage because of his order flow, because of this technology. Same with Jane Street, et cetera. These guys are so far ahead that it's hard to see people catching up, but they just got a little less far ahead, and that changes things.
but going back to, like, we were talking about, with Cled, it's he had a product, someone copied it, they're gonna go after the same customers. I mean, Citadel obviously has a product, you're not buying that, like, average person's not buying this product, right?
No.
But they had this real market insight. He hired the best PhDs, he's built this massive hedge fund, he has institutional knowledge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which puts him ahead of everyone else and everyone else in his class. Everyone's copying him, but there's a group of them. But he says here, uh, paraphrase it, he says, to be blunt, work that would usually do with people with master's degrees and PhDs in finance over a couple of weeks or months being done by AI agents over the course of hours or days. So these are not mid-tier white-collar jobs. These are likely extraordinarily high-skilled jobs. And I'm going to pick a word, pick a word, being automated by agentic AI. And so then he says, I went home on Friday actually fairly depressed because you could see how it was going to have such a dramatic impact on the society. That's what he said just a few days ago. And a year ago, he said it's a tool. But I think he's seeing that like his whole business is like, wow, like I could automate it away, but so can everyone else. I think society to him means something very different than just greater society. I think he's
Well,
reflecting on his community in the Hamptons or wherever and his cadre of folks. It's like, wow, what does that really mean? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I would, again, I don't want to, put words in or thoughts in Ken Griffin's head. He can speak for himself quite eloquently. But I think he sort of viewed it as, okay, I understand AI, it's coming, and it is going to replace knowledge workers at a low level. And
Well, he's saying
now
at the high level,
that's what I'm
white collar.
saying.
Yeah.
So I don't think that that depressed him. Like that didn't make him sad when he went home on Friday night that knowledge work at a low level was going to go away. But I think when he sees the people who are literally at the pinnacle of their careers, at the pinnacle of their fields, and in their value to society, their value to him as an employer goes away because they are being replaced by agentic
Automated.
AI.
Yeah.
um, makes it a difficult place, makes the world a difficult place, makes the world a lonely world to some degree. And when the smartest guys in the room are getting replaced by the smartest AI in the room at a fraction of the cost, capitalism demands that you replace the human with the system. Just just
Well, yeah.
demands it.
Yeah.
So
I think that that's where we were talking earlier. It's like if you actually have a sales force that's like servicing a customer and the humans talking to the other humans are actually adding the value. It's harder to replace that because that's part of the value chain. But in Citadel's case, like you're not interfacing with anybody really. I mean, if you're putting money
those
in,
dudes are locked in a room somewhere. I mean,
yeah,
they're purposely kept in the dark, and like please don't talk to any other humans. Look, I worked for one of the great credit funds, King Street Capital, for a while, and there were two partners, Brian Higgins and Fran Biondi. They were the two founders of the company, and they were both incredibly smart and incredibly good at what they did. I would argue that Fran may have been the smartest investor that I'd ever seen in terms of being able to keep positions in his head and understand how they all related to each other. Just literally like 350 positions. He knew them all and he knew how they all related and why he had them, et cetera, et cetera. I've worked with a guy, Jim Pilato, who who's just a world-class hedge fund manager, another just, Hall of Famer. But anyway, back to King Street, like Brian, who really ran trading at first, but then ultimately sort of hired people to run trading and really just ran the whole operation and raised the money and did all of the stuff that was necessary to do. He once described his job as like Fran is a supercomputer and my job is to keep him cool. And I thought that was a sort of a brilliant way of Brian to describe what he did, which underplays what he does, which is absolutely necessary for a guy like Fran to do what he did. But it just means that like there are some guys like this that are just, did you really want Fran dealing with all sorts of BS when his brain power was such that you really just wanted him thinking about bond
well,
positions,
now
stock positions, and investments and stuff like
Fran's
that.
an AI now. You know what I mean? Like, right?
Yeah,
It's like that's the thing.
exactly. Exactly. And so you have to make sure that AI just stays cool and just keeps running and churning 24/7 at higher and higher clock speeds.
Yeah, and
And
I think that's where the copy on our theme here is like, one of our themes here in this podcast is like the copy generation, time collapsing. I think really big financial institutions that have no relationships with anybody, their mode is actually kind of getting pretty risky, I think. You know what I mean? Obviously, these big guys aren't going to go away, but it's like you could see baby hedge funds coming out online now. It's like, they're probably all bullshit. Hey, but a lot of people can use AI infrastructure to start creating hedge funds that could probably operate pretty well, maybe not as good as Citadel or the other ones, but
Yeah.
it's starting to happen, which I think is probably terrifying. Or a PhD could just bounce out of the Citadel group and just say, "I'm gonna use AI, and I could direct it and have 20 AIs, 30 AIs running, and I can make my own hedge fund." There's no.
And look, guys do that all the time, right? I mean, Citadel. I mean, you have to understand what Citadel is. Citadel isn't Ken Griffin picking stocks, right?
No, of course not.
Let's just be clear. It's computers who do a lot of stuff. They do. They're one of their great businesses, and one of the real geniuses of Ken originally was, he basically bought market making operations, so he sees more flow for options and other things than almost anybody else.
Which is
And
alpha,
as
right? Which is the
yeah,
alpha.
as does Jane Street, so that they see the flow, and as a result of seeing the flow, they're able to fine tune their models based on full information of the market. Where anyone else doing that has to wait for those trades to go through, and they're behind. And they're always going to be behind. There is no way to catch up to that unless they want to pay more for the flow. But I would assume that flow is efficiently priced.
Mhm.
And so you'd have to overpay for it in order to do that. So really hard to catch up to that. Now they have a whole bunch of other businesses. They do have, smart guys who pick stocks.
Sure.
And, they call them pod shops, whereas, it's basically you get a sleeve of capital and you trade within some risk parameters. And if you lose enough money, you just get fired that day along with everyone else that's associated with you. And out you go. Lose enough money, half your capital disappears. Lose any more money, all of your capital disappears, and you're looking for another job.
Yeah, I think,
And, it's you get
you're
the smartest guys in the world want that trade.
they want it, and listen, the moat is I think the moat, when you're a top trader, your moat is obviously your team, but there's also the dinner parties that you attend, and you get a lot of, like, intel from just knowing what's going on. So
Right.
I'm not really worried. My claim isn't that these guys are gonna get wiped out or anything. I feel like when I watched that video clip and saw just sort of Ken talk about it, I was just like, "Okay, these companies are gonna also go under, like, a AI transformation,
Of
more so
course.
than they have been, and that's gonna yield something new and different
Yeah.
that no one's gonna copy them because they don't have enough time, and there's enough moat in there, like you said. Obviously, raising the capital, but just team and talent, et cetera, I think is meaningful. But at the same time, I don't think he realized how the effect of AI was gonna hit him in that's what he says. And I don't think he knows what it's gonna mean in 9 months, in 18 months, in 36 months, what it's gonna do to his businesses either.
Right. I think like everything else, if there are inefficiencies in your business, AI will root them out, or somebody will root out those efficiencies in their own business and will outcompete you. And that's, I think, across every aspect
Right.
of your business, every aspect. So you will have to become a more efficient coder. AI's kind of done that for you. You'll have to become more efficient at reviewing code. AI is doing that for you. You'll
Yeah.
have to become a more efficient marketer. You'll have to become more efficient at sales. You'll have, I mean, all of these things will need to become more efficient, or you'll be eaten up by somebody who can copy your business and just do it ruthlessly more efficiently.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's just, it's just a business cycle that used to be 20 and 30 years, which then was 2 or 3 years, which is now, was 2 months, and now it's gonna be, 2 days through 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And you're just gonna have to live in the time frame that technology affords you,
Well, just going back on that,
which is hard.
it's hard. I actually if you sort of play out the SaaS apocalypse, right, that we've been talking about, I think some of it gets absorbed into the company, right? So if you have a company, I don't know, you're doing data sales like this other company was doing. I think your SaaS expenditure gets reduced because you're making your AI expenditure higher. Therefore, you're building more of these tools internally, and they have a little less fit and finish. But you're saying, hey, we need this. You just tell it, build this, and here's the dashboard for whatever team you're using. So I think the low end SaaS goes away. I think the upper end, where there is a human on the other side selling to the other human inside, I think those are somewhat more safe. Like, actually, I think that they become more stable, and I think you bet on them harder. I don't think that those all just get blown away. Like the hyperscalers, the snowflakes, those kinds of companies aren't going away because it's hard to reproduce, obviously. And I think those are better bets longer term. I think everything else that's ephemeral, faceless, nameless SaaSes, they're really hard. I mean, even so much so, it's like I used to be a big Notion fan. I'm kind of like for what the level of Notion that I use, I could probably have Claude just do it for me.
Yes.
And I'm kind of almost there. Even Obsidian. Oh, Obsidian has like a nice mind mapping thing, and we've been playing with that for our personal executive agents. But even then, I'm like, wait a second. It's like, why can't Claude just do this for me? Like, is there some real unique thing that it's doing? And the answer is probably not. Therefore, why pay them the money every month? I think that SaaS level of business is going to go away. I think your spend goes up with Claude or Grok or OpenAI. That just keeps going up to the right.
Totally. And I look, I think if you have a SaaS that does, I don't know,
How about
it,
this? A SaaS that keeps track of your posting and allows your social media manager dashboard that posts your stuff and you get approvals and all that kind of stuff, like a company like Buffer. I think that that's a classic SaaS, and I'm just hey, someone build this internally and get rid of that payment.
yeah, it could be, or I think there's two. I see barbells, right?
Yeah, barbells,
I
sure.
see something that is mm, $3 a month, $5 a month, something like that. And it's just a utility. And you look at it and go, that works really well for me. I know that it will turn my documents into PDFs, which I need to, send to somebody. And okay, like it's a super cheap utility and it costs me $30 a year. And do I care about the $30 a year relative
No,
to building my own software and maintaining it? And the answer is
it,
no.
and on that barbell there, Harry, I would say that barbell, that end, that's $3 or $5, needs to basically only speak API agent speak. Like I
Yeah.
never need to go to it. It just goes. My agent says, "Hey, there's this thing. It does. It makes my 1 meg screenshots into 50K web Ps,
Yep.
and it's better for my website. It's $60 a year. The agent just buys it. You don't even know. It's cheaper than inference cost almost.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And then I think you have the higher end, right, as you talked about. High
Snowflake.
touch, high
Yeah,
service, really like you're it's almost like you're buying a consulting team.
correct.
You bring in a consulting team that happens to have a product and a system that you're for a very specific purpose in your company. And they need to be consultative engineers, not just sellers of SaaS seats. And by the way, they need to speak human and they need to speak agent, both.
Correct.
Which is why why you saw things like Twilio, the stock go through the roof because, the revenues are up because everybody who has voice all of a sudden needs to call on Twilio because it was cheaper than building Twilio again. And, a stock that was just sort of, trending downward with the SaaSpocalypse all of a sudden, gapped upward 40 or 50% because it was like, hey, we're actually a winner because we're, as Thomas, I always want to say Tugger nuts, but because I'm a big fan of Tropic Thunder, but
We all
Tungus,
are.
um, said you want to be either selling inference or the first derivative of inference, and these guys are selling the first derivative of inference at this moment in time, so they're being rewarded for that. And the closer you can get to the inference, the better off your business is going to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, Twilio is sort of also a hyperscaler because they have all this telephony equipment in the cloud that is really hard to sort of replicate. All
Right.
that SIP and protocols. I've been a long. I don't. I'm probably a shareholder because I've been a long fan of Twilio since I don't know, 15, 20 years.
Right.
Um, they do something very unique, and none of the AI companies do any of that. So they're a hyperscaler of voice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Datadog was the other one that got mentioned in Tungus's piece, and, we wrote about it, a little bit last night, and it's just like, same sort of thing. First derivative of inference and therefore doing incredibly well all of a sudden as these agents all get deployed by
Now,
people.
yeah, no, so I I I I did well on Datadog. I invested in those guys, not privately on the public market, but I thought a Datadog when I saw that in your new I think you put it in the most
Yeah,
recent newsletter. I actually felt that those would be something that you can copy. Although when I start thinking about it, the reason why I think it's actually harder is it's a detail. You actually have to instrument a lot of machines in your network to actually send data to aggregate it. And I think that that is a moat. Like if you deploy Datadog and you're spending a lot of time setting these little listeners up on your systems to send a Datadog, and I feel like that's a moat. So now that if you're saying, okay, I got Datadog deployed, now Datadog's original fancy dashboard is kind of old, but now I have all this like cool AI. I can ask it a lot more questions. That is really special, and so I think that gives Datadog a lease on life because it's the moat is that you're sort of deployed physically on the all your servers that are inside your cloud.
yep.
Very unique position. It's a technical detail that a lot of people probably wouldn't appreciate.
And then I guess the only question that I would have with, with any of these companies, as you fly closer to the sun, so to speak, as you fly closer to the inference companies themselves, do they ultimately see value and decide to just build it in?
I mean, 100%. I think in Datadog's case and in Twilio's case, just an example is like they have like look, Twilio's got a lot of specialized switching stuff into like what they'd call like layer 7 switches into telephone communication systems. It's hard, it's physical. It's literally atoms, racked and stacked and hooked into like uh, you know,
Yeah.
VoIP
Yeah,
systems. Harder to
AT&T has it.
do.
Yeah. Yep.
Datadog, similar. You have an IT guy that's I got 6,000 machines. They all have these listeners. Harder for like AI to go, I'm going to deploy all these things. But maybe I wouldn't say no. You know what I mean? I don't know. I wouldn't say maybe on the voice layer. It's like maybe AI is going to be fast enough to just auto deploy a full VoIP stack, SIP stack, and just start talking telephone. You know what I mean? Could be. So I would say I wouldn't bet against it. I would just put that more of an elliptical path than flying to the sun rather than sort of like a really sort of tight path. I think everything that's simple, I mean, I think Notion and all those kinds of software are really a high risk.
Totally.
High
Yeah.
risk.
What's the old Jeff Bezos line? Your margin is my opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, your margins, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
S
I think that well, you saw it with Claude's small business, which is just a
Yep.
like a pile of really cool skills that if you were shrewd enough to use, you could use it. Now, I think that's where Claude goes. And I think you and I spoke about this with the deployment company and all these things. I think there's a Trojan horse here. I think if you're buying Claude and you're buying Claude's consultant service, or you're buying OpenAI and you're buying consulting services, and maybe you're buying it from McKinsey or something like that, I think McKinsey's going to lose the battle because it's like
Yeah.
it's like at some point someone from OpenAI says, "Hey, you've got all this OpenAI services, or you got all these Claude services you've been buying from McKinsey. Hey, we're going to sell it to you for like a lot cheaper. Here it all is." I think those consulting companies really are just system integrators, at some point because they're not the intelligence is in the Claude or is in the OpenAI. It's a
Yeah,
really
I mean, at the very, again, at the very top of those companies are people who are very smart about an industry,
yep,
who have seen it all, and who have personal relationships across the industry that can really effectuate change. But everything below those guys, all the vice presidents and associates and analysts, and the typical investment bank staff that's like just doing grunt work and preparing decks,
gone,
gone.
gone.
Same thing with the law firms, "Hey, you gotta file this brief." Gone. But the
Yeah,
guy who sits there and says, "Here's how we're gonna negotiate the $111 billion merger," that guy still has real value and will extract more and more value
yep,
because of that.
yep. And he or she will need a team, and I think
Yeah.
that when we say gone, it just means you're gonna have to be, Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal kind of quality players to be on the team. You can't be like, "Hey, I'm gonna help out," and just, it's like, "No,
Yeah, it
man."
can't be the 10th or 11th guy on the bench.
Yeah, so it's not gone. It's just like the actual buyers of team and talent can just be really choosy.
I mean, if you look, and by the way, if you follow that line of logic down down the path, and you say that there are tens of thousands of people who are not Kobe Bryant and Shaq, or hundreds of thousands or millions who are not, because they're not,
Yeah, billions.
and those people will be displaced because that's capitalism. Now you understand why Ken Griffin goes home sad, because he knows that actually his fortress is going to get stormed by angry people who have been displaced by AI, and he's sitting there as, one of the richest guys in the world. Like, if you're one of the mega wealthy guys, like you've already won. There's nothing AI is going to do that's going to change your life.
No, not at all.
But what it will do is create some level hatred, further hatred of you, as opposed to just a normal hatred of the rich. It will become further hatred, which may lead to violence, which may
Well,
lead to, a whole a whole series of, legal changes and stripping of your money, and all your winnings redistributed somehow.
yeah, that
And that's that would be a very sad thought, if when you go home to your $200 million mansion, that someone's going to take it away because it's politically expedient to do so. And again,
yeah.
I don't want to get into the politics of it, but I do think that if you follow what we're saying to the nth degree, it just means that tens of millions of people are going to be displaced, and most of them are not equipped to figure this shit out on their own.
Yeah, so without discussing the politics of it, I think that the capitalism favors efficiencies, and it will find its way. And I think many people like the boss because you were part of the team. And I think that the team is going to become smaller. Yes, Mark Andreessen talks about you'll have millions of new jobs. I actually think you will have new jobs for sure,
Yeah.
100%. Um, but you'll also be losing jobs. So it's like it's not fair to say there's just going to be a net net new jobs. I think there's gonna be a job loss, period, and there's gonna be net new jobs. And, you have to figure out if you're gonna be part of that, and that is not clear
Yeah.
how a lot of people are gonna be part of that.
Again, you see it. I mean, I used to run a sports data company, and we used to talk about how the Pittsburgh Steelers fans were everywhere. They were the most rowdy group at all the away games, and you think, man, those Steeler fans, they really, they travel, they get out of Pittsburgh and they go see the games. And the answer is no, they don't. What happened was Steel got out of Pittsburgh in the 70s, back in
Mhm.
the heyday of the Iron Curtain defense, and Terry Bradshaw, et cetera, and Lynn Swann and Stallworth and all those guys. And they had to go find new jobs, so they left Pittsburgh. And so, I have all these sort of hereditary Steelers fans that ended up in Southern California, or they ended up in Texas, or, wherever they ended up to find new work. Now, the question is, with AI, is you've already gone through a whole bunch of these cycles. So it's not like there's a whole bunch of jobs waiting for knowledge workers in Tennessee,
No,
and so there's,
or anywhere, not just
or
Tennessee, just anywhere.
that's correct. Anywhere in the world, basically. So you really have to hope with this iteration that what you do is you end up creating new industries and new categories of jobs that people can transition into. Because if you can't, then you're going to take the highest earning workers in the country and you're going to put them on welfare,
Yeah, and that's
and
that's that's where
it's a disaster.
yeah, and that's where politics comes into it, and we're gonna pause on the politics. What we
Yes,
will say, because frankly, our AI analyzed our podcast and said, "Hey, stay away from the politics." So we actually
correct.
are listening to our AI, even though Harry and I would love to talk about the politics, and we'd be happy to sidebar someone and talk about the politics of the world as a result of AI, but we're gonna resist here.
Yeah, but by the way, it's not that we don't want to talk about it. It's just I think with any argument that you make, you sort of owe it to yourself to follow the argument and see where it leads and see what the likely outcomes are and what the possible outcomes are of any argument. So you can't talk about capitalism and efficiency without talking about what does that mean? Because efficiency used to mean that machines replaced humans in a factory and you got a more efficient factory out of it. But those workers then became knowledge workers. And now you're saying that those knowledge workers are being replaced by machines who are
Mhm.
doing that work faster. And so the question is, what are the knowledge workers going to become? Are they going to become farmers all of a sudden? They're going to
We
start,
don't know yet.
yeah, we don't know.
We don't know yet.
That's exactly right.
We
But
don't know yet.
what they will become is angry and disenfranchised first, and that creates problems for society, period. You can't have a group of angry, disenfranchised people without ultimately, having some transition, some
Yeah,
upheaval, et
it
cetera, et cetera.
it's happened in history, and we're gonna be around for the ride. In fact, the reason why we are actually even on this podcast, and let's just wrap it up here. The reason why we started this podcast, the reason why we started talking about co-AI in late 2022, early 23, was that we were trying to forewarn people of this in coming. So this summer of 2026 is really going to be, frankly, we're going to see the copy generation continue to move faster. We're going to see what we think time is collapsing, meaning time to market, time to testing your product is all going to be happening. I think we're going to see winners and losers happen in months. And for the next podcast, I think we're going to talk about what is an executive personal agent. We've been developing our own. Harry and I have our own versions of it, and we spend a lot of time thinking about this. And I think that this summer of 2026 is going to be about, what is your executive personal agent doing? How are you running it? What stack you're on? How's it working? We're probably going to talk to some practitioners about that. And then we're going to try and direct ourselves to think about everything we were just talking about, the societal impact. I think that there's been a request from friends and family, like, what do we do with our kids? Like,
Yeah.
what do we do with our college kids? What do we do with our
High school
high
kids
school kids? I
are,
have
yeah,
two. I
yeah.
have a high school kid and a college kid. Like, so we're going to spend some time perhaps writing about it and building some thought leadership on how do you deal with your children, and as we look at this world. And we'll have a podcast on that in a couple weeks. We'll probably have some writing on that. Harry's been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it, and we've been requested about it. So we may have a series on that as well. That's what's coming up. And everything that we've talked about today is, of course, on the getcoai.com URL. It's on our Twitter, getcoai, and we would encourage you to sign up for the newsletter and send it to a friend, because I think what we're producing is quite informative and it's not over anyone's head. It's actually quite enjoyable to read. Harry's been crafting a very sharp newsletter,
We try every day.
and we hope you guys are enjoying it. So, Harry, I got nothing else to say. What do you got? Anything?
No, I think that's you wrapped it up nicely in a
All
bow.
right,
So
we're getting
appreciate it.
better. All right, man.
We're trying.
All right, see ya.
See ya. Take care.